Welcome to our UKFM market. Obviously, we did this webinar in March last year, why UKFM market is screwed, and that's a good thing because we came out of COVID and then things were unsettling. We had enough prime ministers last year, as you know, economy was starting to go into turmoil. To make it worse, we started to face some issues within our markets as well. So I thought, okay, this is what we do. So if you have missed that, this is a follow-up from that thing. You can go to bachurain.com/events. So we posted all of our important webinars. We have done nearly 30 webinars. So we have posted like maybe 15 of them over there. So please do have a look in that. It will give you an understanding of what I mean by that. So today's session, most of you know who we are and who I am because many of you are my close friends. So thank you for joining. Thank you for supporting. So if you don't know, this is where we all started. People normally come to us, Bhaskar, we want to have some market strategy done, sales pipeline done, bid support, bid writing. Can we download your market report? We want to have an independent investor analysis. Can you do a voice of the customer training? Anything and everything, right? It just comes in there. So we also work with a select group of buyers in engaging with their market engagement and also on their procurement support as well. So if you don't know, welcome. If you know us, thank you for joining. So this is just the overall story. So today, as always, we are going to be very honest because nobody talks about it because the world ticks along. We can continue to act in the same way as we normally act. It's very hard to change, as you know. But on the other side, if we continue to do what we are doing, how long can we continue this way? Right, so we did based on data, based on interviews, based on public, social, and other elements. We are going to share a lot of insights. Don't take it personally, but this is where the market is heading to. So this is the data points behind. Because when we started, what we started was only industry. We started to support many of our friends within the big, or what we call, top 20 suppliers. Gradually, we moved into real estate providers, prop tech people who entered the market, consulting firms. Interestingly, last month, Ernst & Young, Deloitte, McKinsey, OCNC, I was surprised, all four active with us, seeing what they are doing. And then FMCXO's friends, estate and facilities moved on from 2020 post-COVID. So all this and funds, investment analysis, as you can see, UK is now a hotbed for acquisition because of the market value of UK is at the lowest. So anyone in the US can buy the company at just 40% the rate than what they pay before. So it's pretty cheap. So you are going to find a lot of acquisitions and even companies with a lot of backing in the UK with some big funds are going to buy even more. So you're going to see more. And any of these things. These are the questions that we'll be trying to address. Are we doing the same? Are we trying to be different? If so, who's trying to be different and so on? So challenge one. The reason there is a lot of text in it is we find a lot of people who also read our materials after. So it's important rather than we come out with lots of charts and other things. Now we have done it with our Lens platform, which I'll show you at the very end. This is important. So as you can see, the single or bundled or IFM, you can find any reports that says I integrated FM as a preferred model. All these are debunked now. It's like the market is torn between specialist services and comprehensive packages, and it's totally up to the individual buyer and the individual supplier to just work it through. Similarly, technology, we all are moved into technology, but how good are we in doing that? No, we get a lot of negative comments when FM companies talk technology and they don't deliver technology. With most importantly, they don't even deliver FM properly. So we will also share one or two of these things. The rest of it, as so technology, energy, workplace is totally muddled with FM now. But at the same time, are they procured separately? No, they are not. So if not, what are we actually doing it for? Okay, that's where you find a lot of sustainability consultancy, FM technology consultancy within FM companies doing those things. And that's where a lot of action happens. If so, how successful were we in this past 1 year? Let's have a look. Construction FM, interestingly, has, because most of the big construction FM companies, have taken a different route. It used to be very popular during the Interserve era, Interserve Boix, OJEU, and other eras, but for some reason, it's not so popular anymore. So This is me. If you know me, that's me. And what we have is real estate. This is where the crux is happening. You're going to find a lot of real estate players who weren't active in the market, now very, very active in the market, because they are entering. Before, they were just operating, okay, lease holdings, big buildings and stuff, because we manage nearly 6,000 buildings with top 10 FM players, which I'll also show you. So what do they need to know? A, local suppliers in the area, plus B, can they serve it themselves if there is a chunk? So it's in the past, they were just high-level property developers, because we do have a lot of banks, property forums, and property investors who we do seminars with, and it's going in the past it will be a less interesting work for them. It's like from top to bottom, but now they're very, very keen on what's happening there. Integrators up and down, it comes in where you don't do FM, you just manage the supply chain. Again, there are a few people who have done it, but quietly they moved out to the market. You know who they are. This is a big pain for us. The reason why we go through all these things is because we don't have an industry body in the UK. I don't know how long we are going to continue to follow in this spiral. That meant every company is trying to position their own brands, and then there are many things that we could avoid by doing what we are currently doing. But anyway, that's it there. So market is very, very reactive. Anything changed from last year to this year? No, not much. So as I pointed out, what we are finding, this is very interesting. Having looked at some data sets, the bigger players are actually struggling. When I say struggling, we will look at the data set and said the bigger players are actually finding it more challenging to renew their private sector contracts than their public sector contracts. So that's, I don't know whether you have noted that, but it's happening because it's becoming very, very challenging for them to do it than public sector. Public sector is now especially with the friends at CCS and stuff. Again, if you're a larger provider, who went into RM 6232, or if you're part of the 3830, the previous frameworks, you know that you are on the safer side, and there are a lot of projects that's coming up on the bigger tiers, which you can bid and win. So what you're finding here is, the PropTech FM SaaS, recently I got engaged with the PropTech Association. I had no idea. Their world is totally different to our world. But that's now slowly starting to come together. What is FM SaaS and stuff? It's coming together, but it's gaining adoption. Talent shortage is not just within the FM industry, it's also on the buyer side as well. Recently, I was speaking to NHS. They nearly lost 30% of their facilities and estates apprentices to the industry. And the industry are losing more people outside the industry. So it is going on. Again, procurement practice, we will touch that both on the public sector and on the private sector. There are a few companies who work and they do what they're doing. Either they make it too complex or they make it too basics and they make a lot of errors. We'll also look at some of the data sets. So key point is the market is, as always, kind of disrupted. Because of this chaos, we are now becoming a hotbed for buy cheap. Right? Again, the question last time when we tried to address this, okay, the many companies, because the reason for this is one of the bigger player, they spend nearly £75,000 engaging with one of the big four just to crunch all the companies above £5 million. So all the companies above £5 million, they wasted all the money. Then they come back to us and say, Bhaskar, we want to have a private sector. What's the private sector landscape looks like in these 3-4 sectors. But before that, they nearly spent £75,000 on this. The question was very simple. At an average, if I'm going with the private sector, what do you think my FM spend should be in comparison to their annual turnover? Of course, it's not a straightforward answer, and we try to answer that in a report for them. And these are just some of the headlines. And obviously, it depends on the industry where they are. It depends on how big or small they are. It depends on location, the real estate where they are present. It depends on ownership, whether it's leased or owned. And it also depends on the business model, which is it high intense assets, not assets. And it also depends on what's the scope. In-house, outsource also come in. So before we positioned 0.2% to 2%, but we did a deep dive on that. And now we can fairly estimate by different sectors that say, what an average FM spend is roughly going to be this. But again, the question is, which I never try to understand is, okay, public sector, why is it challenging for them to come out? Because we monitor nearly 15,000 contracts, out of which nearly 2/3 of the contracts, the gaps is from the public sector, which is very, very challenging. Which is like, okay, you are outsourcing a contract. And it's legally mandated to come out and release what's the value of the contract that's been outsourced, etc. But why there is a gap? Why is it challenging for us to estimate this particular contractor's value and that one? Because it's always been a thing. But now with the collaboration with few buyers, we are trying to address. We have given them access to the platform, and the only reason is we're going to free access to the platform, provided you could fill the data gaps. Because in that way, we are improving the granularity of the data. We are gradually getting there. Otherwise, this is the market. If you're going for new markets, etc., if you want to have a benchmark of, hey, what does it mean to do? This is it. From point 2 to 2, now we have a good idea. Public sector data. Now I know some of my friends from buyers, from commercial services or a cabinet office will be watching this, or they'll be joining live soon. But again, the fair view of the market, or I have a good understanding of the market, is always means that you don't really know it. This is the kind of a false assurance that you get, where, okay, everything is publicly available. But over 80% of the projects that we get is because people go burn money or burn their time, especially trying to understand, crunch it. They pay a lot of money if you are with few providers, because the trouble is when one provider and the government supplier buys a tool, everybody goes and buys a tool, and there is now one tool which is very popular, and 80% of the projects comes from the companies which subscribe to that one tool and pay nearly 30,000 to 50,000 with them. And why? Because of this. Right? Because these guys are data integrators. They're not FM companies. And the buyers on the other side, the challenge, you can go and find the same thing. Buyers on the other side, they also have it hard, where they don't relevant CPV codes, which are supposed to be. And if you're not familiar with CPV codes, then we look at what it is. So some tools allow you to add CPV codes, some tools allow you to add the keywords. And either way, it only works if the buyers or the procurers within the company, within who's procuring the service, whether it's local government or it's NHS or it's schools or hospitals or higher education, anybody, transport, etc., put that right code, right? You might think I'm doing this, and I have the right keyword, I might the right keyword. This trend, unfortunately, is exacerbated, and now. So primarily, we are losing a lot of contract, which meant nearly 12% of the public sector tenders is actually, FM tenders is actually marked wrong, or wrong tenders comes up within FM, which meant every week, good luck. And I have all the time for the research analysts or business development managers in the company to crawl through, oh my God, I received all these tender alerts on a daily basis. 15, 20 comes up on a day, relevant, but I can only see 2 or 3 is relevant to me. Rest are all noise. Anybody feel that? If you can feel that, put it on the chat. It's because of the situation. And this is the thing that nobody addresses, because these are data aggregators. They know the FM. So that's what we are trying to address. So primarily, this is in certain cases, many of the tools that you have, you can't even go back and add specific codes. You can, again, this is why this is a challenge, because the public sector tend to be very robust, very mature in the UK. Why are we facing this for so long? And why are we facing this even after spending 30,000, 50,000 worth of pounds to these companies, right? Supposed to be free with Finder tender, with Contracts Finder, but still you go back and go for paid tenders, and still you face all these issues, right? Step by step, we started to work within the public buyers and say, okay, fine, we will refine, we'll take only the FM data, we'll cleanse the FM data by sector, by services, so that you only get 3 or 4 which are relevant done to you, rather than you crawl multitude of information. What else? Once we get it, okay, now if it's relevant, we add the source link. Otherwise, what generally happens, you get a tender alert, here's a brief, email after email, you click, then you need to go somewhere. And if you click, it automatically saved, and these are the opportunities. And it also have contact name, contact address, etc. And many of the tools, you have to go and pay. Why? We want to eliminate the clutter, we want to eliminate the guesswork. Gradually, we're addressing this, but we are not there, but we have got a robust foundation, right? Well, some tools provide good foundation. We just want to go beyond. Again, we are starting to address what we can do on this. Again, when you're working with the CPV codes, when you're working with the public sector, don't just take it blindly and say, okay, we are receiving it. For larger value contracts, the business development directors and the BDMs tend to know, okay, this is coming up. But if you're very reactive and wait for some projects to come through to your inbox, just be clear, you might be missing many. IT tagged in FM, landscaping tagged wrongly in somewhere else. Especially if you're an SME, you need to be very, very careful. This was the last time, and we did okay. What happened? Because one of our friends asked us, okay, Bhaskar, did you notice that the number of FM opportunities coming to the market is actually slowed down? Or in other words, do you think the number of opportunities that we go in 2015 to 2018 to 2022, the number of FM opportunities, the volume of FM opportunities is actually low? What do you think the answer is? Anybody? If you want to add in the chat box, I'll tell you the answer later. So this is this will keep it interactive so that I don't want to talk to myself. So primarily, what we have here is this is the previous assessment, which is previous assessment, we did all these things, right? What happened here is insourcing is continued to becoming a massive trend, within the industry body. And if you look, the NHS insourcing market grew for nearly 19%, record 31 deals around last year, right? Especially, private equity backed, or what we call PFI, the PFI separate story, we can go with that. Insourcing is big in Northeast, Northwest, Welsh, etc. If you are in that market, you need to be very, very mindful of. And on the other side, it's been happening for tricking along where the trust deficit is going on. So when you're going with local government NHS, just mindful of it. But on the other side, we did a detailed study on this last year. But this is why you find many of the providers, especially one of the bigger provider, they pulled out of the market 6 months ago. Now they're coming back into the market, and I'm sure they're going to pull out of the market. And there is a lot of confusion. Insourcing is always there, and the challenge is continuing to grow. So what are the key trends from this? We looked in 2022, we found 30 contracts, 19 were insourced. 2023 so far, 26 contracts were insourced. Yes, the trend is pretty much the same, or it's even more. By December, it's going to be more. So same thing, reprocurement, which is meant the 340 FM projects are not procured in the original format. This is where it's key. No tool, if you go back to any public sector tool, that just go back and say, okay, it tells you contract awards, it tells you tender alerts. But if you want to know how did this buyer procure this service in the previous procurement, you won't get it. You won't get it. So that's basics, right? Or if you want to be intelligent bidding, as we call it, you want to know, okay, and I want to know 2015, yes, one or two tools might tell you who the incumbent is. So you just need to go back, click the page, and then go back to other page and say, read everything. But what if it's easy for you to just say, okay, you connect the contract award to tender alerts, and then connect the tender alerts to the next contract awards, and that becomes seamless for you. But either way, that's the work that we're working on as we speak. But again, the reprocurement shifts meant it's becoming very, very challenging to just say, okay, the buyers are not procuring. That's a very first point that we talked about. Bundled services, single services, etc. Just work with the buyer and then understand somebody's influencing them to decide why this is the right format. Let that be you. And if it's happening in the way that you want to go, that's good news for you. Otherwise, it's tough. So frameworks, as you know, there is, in the past, we talked in length about it last time, and the framework there is declining. Especially in the past, the NHS, local councils, the fire departments, they all came out with frameworks. But today, they all stopped doing frameworks, which means you only have the LPPs, you only have the CCSs, you only have the SCAPEs of the world, you only have the ESPOs of the world who do the frameworks. And which meant you are not spending a lot of time and money getting into a framework and then keep bidding for other frameworks, which is good news. But on the other end, do we have the granularity details behind? Okay, fine. The frameworks are telling us all this information. Obviously, they have a business case. Within the government, they have to come out with, okay, I'm coming out with a 12 billion FM framework, meant like the 12 billion should be made up of a certain number. What is the number? What are the list of contracts? And why those contracts didn't come up when the thing holds? Because that's where you see many SMEs didn't bid this time. And many SMEs who got into this frameworks are not really happy because it's a visibility. It's a visibility of what they need to do. But again, it's a thing that we are starting to engage. We're starting to fill the gaps to just say, okay, fine. There's a lot of work gone in from the industry to there, and there's a lot of work gone in from the public sector to that, but something is missing. Can we help with them on the data? That's where we are looking. So this was the question. I know nobody answered it. So that is a 9% reduction in the public sector FM contract volume as of 2018, which meant the number of contracts that's coming out in the FM is reduced by 9%. I mean, in the past, they used to have a lot of small value contracts, but now they don't do. But again, you can understand which sectors do it. The retention survey is under the word that we are doing it every week. We go directly to the buyers and ask them, what they think of it, and we're adding more and more private rather than public at the moment. So primarily, this is you can see the dates so far. So primarily, retention is continuing to become a challenge for companies. And it's going to be a big challenge if you're in a private sector. So don't underestimate. If you have a renewal 2024 with private sector, and if you have all the glossy projects that you're looking for in private sector next year, I suggest you focus on your renewals rather than your new business, because renewals, somebody is going to displace you, and you don't want to lose a contract that you're already doing, because the trend shows us private sector renewals are up for grabs. No provider is safe, regardless of what your NPS score tells you. Whereas in the other side, as you can see here, replacement meant like buyer get replaced. And then you have the undecided, which is like, okay, I'm still not clear. Can I continue? Can I not continue? Which is the dilemma. These are the people, we shouldn't keep them in the dilemma. It's like, what is it? But obviously, if you have run a contract, if you have renewed it twice already, then it's going to be a big one. BBC is a good example. You'll see what the result of BBC is going to be, but people already know the answer, what's going to happen to it. So primarily, yes, there is a growing discontentment, and you should be aware of it. And again, stakeholder matrix, we talked in length about it, and this is especially for private sector, because public sector people seem to think, the tender is coming in, and then they can just do what it takes. So the landscape is very, very complex, and it's continuing to become very complex, especially the more we dilute ourselves into energy, dilute ourselves into sustainability, net zero, technology, all the other stuffs that we're talking about, which means who is our buyer? It's not going to be real estates, right? There's not facilities people, it's somebody else. And who's the person? Is it going to be CPO? Is it going to be CFO? Or is it going to be who? Chief Sustainable Officer? And that's it. And it's becoming very, very hard. So for companies to just engage. So what happens? They wait for the tender to come in, especially bigger companies. They have the luxury because the buyers are anyway going to reach out to them. But for smaller companies or mid-tier companies who are engaging with them, that's where the challenge kicks in, because it can't come in, which meant the overemphasis is there for them. Not many interesting things are happening. Core messages, it's the skill sets is going to be very, very challenging for you to keep moving in the private sector. So this, we addressed it. We raised it as an issue 3 years ago, where why is it hard for people to just say UKFM market is this? If I ask you the question, if I ask any leader, because this is where the acquisitions are made, this is where investors are putting money into this, and why the numbers are different. Why the numbers are and what gives these people the authority to just say this, what happens? And nobody goes and questions their credibility, because they all are research companies coming out with all these numbers. And from 2019, 2020, when we realized people asked me this question, we started to do our own market report saying, hey, we monitor 15,000 contracts, out of which we know X amount of contracts have the contract value, and we know the other contracts, we can estimate the value based on this total value. This is what we believe market size. We can't tell you we have all the contracts that we manage in the UK, but based on our contract, this is the market size, right? Go back and ask these people what the rationale is. They will say we interviewed X, Y, Z, and based on that we come out with it. So what happens? People people buy these reports. People then make some decisions, and then they realize the numbers don't add up. So this is we have now addressed it with the reports, and we are also addressed it with our Lens tool. So if you are interested, we can look into that for you. So again, ESG, I specifically want to focus on this. In the last year on, I was very, very critical on this, which is like FM suppliers are nowhere near, because it's all been taken. Even today morning, if you read who are the people who are very good on this workplace integration or the ESG integration, it all names comes of Accenture, AECOM, Deloitte and others. It's like, hey, workplace, Deloitte, workplace and Accenture, what's that mean? They are consulting companies, right? They are going to get this. Similarly, it's exactly the same thing that happened in sustainability consulting market, where all these bigger players, they all sliced and diced and most of it, and we ended up doing. It's the same thing that happened to us, right? Some FM provider went and spent £75,000, then they came back and said, "Oh, we have £8,000 this year. Can you do anything with this?" Similarly, exactly the same thing that happens with the FM suppliers, where bigger companies. They want to have bigger brands to just say, hey, our sustainability frameworks are created by X, Y, Z. And then these companies make 100,000, 250,000, etc. And it ends up being left out with the FM players to just take it, actually do the work. Good news is it's working. It's working. So continue to thrive on this market, because continue to hold this, because a lot of good work is happening. It could be LED retrofits, indoor air quality, eco-friendly supplies, waste management, reducing waste, upgrades to energy efficient systems, you name it, even cloud-based IT technology systems. We are getting there. But again, the only problem that we face is we just need to create our own market on this. FM providers need to create their own market on this, because there is no specific tenders that comes out, especially in the public sector, that says, we have to go and procure sustainability framework for you, etc. That could be like net zero. What's your net zero road plan, net zero consulting? There are one or two things, but again, these things you won't be even bidding. You won't be even bidding for this, because it's never comes in an FM. So even if you put the right keyword, it never comes in. It could be in consultancy or professional services. You're missing the boat on that. Keep an eye. This is what I'm trying. Keep an eye if you want to do that more on the public sector. But if you're on the private sector, my biggest thing, which I told last year, is partner with some bigger companies, big consulting companies, because in that way you are part of their supply chain, and it works nicely for you. So you're not spending a lot of shaping or pre-sales or onboarding cost. It just comes in as a nice supplier, right? So again, all these things. One of the things which I try to understand this year, which was a question from one of the big real estate provider, is, Bhaskar, where can I find? Every company pledges something. They're going to find net zero by X date. And the study shows many of the companies skip their scope 3 emissions. And there are some honest companies which just said, okay, it also includes scope. And if you are one, well done to you. And others, again, there are a lot more companies. I'm only highlighting few here. So, and others, they just say, we are going to do it. And then they quietly put back the scope 3 out of it, right? So the point here is, if I want to know, okay, 2030, because I was with Y Combinator, we are raising funding, as you know, for our Lens platform. Because last year alone, Y Combinator, and they gave ESG reporting. I don't know which tool, ESG reporting. 40 startups have been given funding for ESG reporting. And in the UK alone, you could do the max. There will be at least 100 ESG reporting tools, where every company uses different reporting tools. Every buyer uses different reporting tools, and every buyer insists you have to use mine, and these suppliers use their own thing. And either way, that's the entire industry is totally, it's totally muddled up, So, and if you want to have that one place where, what are the top 30 FM suppliers? And by 2040, they have achieved that. But where do they stand now in their scope reductions in there? I don't know. Somebody needs to guide me. I couldn't find anything, nor did the supplier. And we spend a lot of time on this. That's the challenge that we're facing, which means we all can pledge something. We all can say this is what we are doing. And this is a study by New Climate, released February 2023. Which meant, yeah, they all pledged it, but they're not on track to meet the targets. Study found companies' pledges were weaker than they seemed. Many didn't go further. Another article from Grants reported that especially the big American firms rely on misleading carbon credits, and they come up, which means it's becoming like an accounting scandal. So I don't know, I've been very critical here, but no, just go back and read this and see. Because if you're working with these clients, just be very mindful. You are also being part of this. Right, you're also being part of this. That's the thing which you want to share. So, UK government, what they did, they went back and come out with sustainability disclosure statement, which is another standard. In addition to all the work that you do in running a company, trying to make that wafer thin margin, you also need to now go back and do this standard from July 2024, which is in addition to what with IFRS, reporting that you do. Now it's going to be standard, which meant now this whole industry is moving from ESG reporting, as I mentioned here. It's becoming bigger and bigger into now it becomes a finance issue. So what happens now? Who is your stakeholder now? It's also going to be a finance director if you're talking about sustainability. Moha, how will he choose now about to sustainability? Because if the cost of the existing service increases by becoming sustainable, who's going to incur that cost during the period when the cost increases? They dump it on the FM supplier. You know what? I want to hit my thing. So you take it, you run with it, and you go back and say, we reduce the energy, let's split 50-50, or let's split some gain share mechanism. But in reality, now it's, as I mentioned, it's getting closer to how people can be very creative on this. I don't know whether you read this report. This is, again, the reason I go net zero is, this is a complete chaos. And on one end, it's very, very exciting thing. But on the other end, because we don't have an industry body, there's no structured process, the structured way of doing. Every company does differently. And government has gotten this report of 129 recommendation, out of which they're working on 36 key. Wait for them to come back with a lot more on this, and wait for your local government to also come back with a lot more on this, which meant we'll be always be reporting something, which is going to be, but there won't be any point where people can actually look into this. So these are some of the challenges. I've already talked about it. There is no standardization. Every company has different methodology of doing things. There is no clear guidelines, complexity of ESG data, interoperability, you name it. The basic thing is, yes, we all have some elements of it, but why can't it be possible for 20 companies, 30 companies sit together and then say, hey, this is one thing, this is all we are going to measure our net zero, and we are all going to put a thing here. And there are one or two, like net 50, there are one or two providers who are doing it, but I just think that this is, I've already covered it. Let me run through quickly. I've already covered this because the UK contract value is declining 5 years in a row, which meant, current contract value is still, I'm still being kind to give 0.4. But every quarter when we do this number, you can see lot of people from outside UK who they are looking into the FM market, or generally the UK market, because it's easy money for them. It's easy money for them, It's like how they buy football clubs, spin it out, it's the same. So, but traditionally institutional investors and the PFI investors have exited. And we just need to question ourselves, at the outset, you won't even realize this is happening. At the outset, you are like, X company has bought X company, good news. And then the X company has won X contract, good news. But then dig deep, you're going to see how vulnerable the whole industry is, right? Yes, there are a lot of companies up for grabs, and these companies will either do whatever they do it. But is it good for the industry? Is it good for us to just say, okay, fine, why can't a UK company go and buy a US company? Why is it always the other way around? Anyway, so the financial resilience also is this, because anyway, the trust erosion is either from investors to, it's all short-termism, as you can see here. It's the investors who are coming in are short-term people, which is not a good sign for the industry. So they are going to make the leaders within these companies who they acquire to make short-term decisions, which meant you're going to find some very bad news that might happen. But we already heard about one bad news that's happening as we see. But again, it's all come because they come in 3 years, they want to get it, or they will acquire some other company to pick the numbers and they go on. But what does it mean for the industry? The trust erosion, economic factors, in addition to it, this is where we are. Twisted data at every level. This is the thing that we are trying to know. What is in our control? How can we make informed decisions? This is where we're looking. Again, nothing has changed on that. We did a massive project on this Eric NHS data. Anybody worked on Eric NHS data? I don't have any good words on this. There is a massive team that's working behind this. The whole purpose of that is you can go with all the NHS trust, and you can clearly see whether PFI or not PFI to clearly understand what's the cost. What's the cost of running a cleaning to security to X service, Y service, etc. If you then go back and then ask the supplier, supposedly it comes from the supplier to the buyer and the buyer to the NHS Digital. But over 80% of numbers are wrong. So if you are going to understand, okay, what are, let's pick up, what are MIT's or OCS's presence in the NHS market using ERIC data, you're going to get it completely wrong. I want to get it complete. What are the outsourced value of an NHS contract? You're going to get complete. And why? I don't understand why. From the buyer to the supplier to the buyer, won't they know what's happening? These are the things the public sector starts something and they don't complete it, and they end up doing the same thing. And again, and as I mentioned, many of the PFI investors are moving out. Things are changing now. You could go back to the what we call the IPA website, and then you could find dashboards on PFI data, but it's taken a while for them to get that. But primarily, it's still there. But what that meant is what happening with the expiry of the contract, which meant, okay, bigger companies, the contract expires. So what happened to PF2, etc. It's unless you are in there, but that data point is what matters. If there are nearly 700 or nearly 800 PFI contracts, and if you want to make, and if every contract is for 25, 30 years, at an average, a contract is 12 to 15 million. And then if you do the max, this is it, this is SPV, this is equity, etc. We scratched our head, and then we looked only at local councils, and we also looked into like education and healthcare-based project. It unnecessarily, it was hard. This is supposed to be publicly available information, but none of these, your OJEU trackers or anything will cover all these things, because let alone the incomplete contract award, which we're talking. And then if you think, okay, fine, this contract, this is the interesting point, right? If this contract is worth, again, I'm talking all the frustrations, which I'm sure you can relate to, because this is all your frustrations, right? If somebody is asking you, okay, fine, I want you to go back and build up local government contracts where the threshold is above £5 million, go and find these contracts. Okay, 70-75% of the contract will have some value, but then you need to estimate the value. But what happens, this is an interesting twist, which we just recently found out, which at the last year, before, or the 12 to 18 months before the actual procurement, any public body will spend a lot more money to add a lot of services within their portfolio, which meant the value of the contract that got procured to the actual value of the contract that got serviced is actually different. It's not the same, which is okay, but that number is 1.5 times more. So the only way you could get that information is through browsing through the contracts data. So, and with all these things, the biggest irony is it's expected public sector data is readily available. So we don't want you to work on that basket, or, we'll pay you this much because it's there, right? It's not there. It's literally not there. And that's why we just tell people, okay, if it's that easy, good luck. We wish you all the very best. You go and do it yourself, because it's like the respect, and all these things. Managing agents, we are now working now. The private sector, we are now filling the gap. Managing agent, top 10. Okay, what are the contracts? What are the buildings that they run across from north to south in different cities? I'll show you. You can get a feel for this. And the important thing is, when it comes to reports, yes, we have got a good place on that, whether it's a Frost & Sullivan or Mintel or anything that you talk about. Yes, they are very good in with their marketing budgets. Obviously, you see them on the top, but we'll come in page 2 or page 3. We don't have much budget. But people are now starting to rely on our work, which is good, because we are FM specific. We can justify why this is made up. We can also connect it to a particular contract. Whereas for them, it's like, okay, marketing people buy market reports, whereas our reports are bought by chief exec and sales directors and people who actually connect the strategy to it. And that's a good thing. So we will have a look. So AI is something which I thought I'll cover quickly before we get into, I know many of you wanted to have a look at Lens platform, but it's just like, so what happens here is AI, there's a lot of generative AI talks that's happening. And I did got to engage with you because we are starting to do one-to-one consulting of what we can do, because we have created a lot of resources around disruptive AI, what happened from March this year. And we also done nearly 30 bits with AI tools. So I'll share all these resources in the links. So again, these are some of the organization survival tactics. There are some people are accelerating, some people are surviving. The AI scene is very simple. I'm sure you can relate to it. The senior leadership is privately discussing, because we get calls directly from the sales directors or the chief sales officers. Very quickly, the second call goes into IT, data governance, copyright issues, what we can do with that. Then it goes into their IT vendors. Then it goes nowhere. But here you have the big people who are frustrated. They need to do that. Their deadlines never stop, and they're very keen to work on this. The marketing people, they want to connect their marketing insights to AI to get some insights. They get nothing. So either way, what happens here is the senior leadership is privately discussing, and putting money on the wrong places, just because it's IT. And on the other side, the employees are actually using it to help their own tasks. So there is zero alignment. More critically, that's not nice. What we generally advise these companies is something that we advise you is number one, your employees are definitely using AI. Just check with them, hey, what's working for them? We always say, first you learn, second you share and collaborate, then you do the process, then you go for the tool, not the other way around. So, and we're starting to do this AI-centric hackathon, which is for 1 or 2 companies, which is like, okay, Bhaskar, now come back, do the training. And now we're bringing all these prompts to just say what we can do within the company. Either way, it just brings up everything. These are quick ideas. It's not just for sales and marketing. It's also for operations. It's also like an efficiencies and other things. It's come there. We create all these things. And the one thing that I strongly recommend if you're listening is, please do reimburse ChatGPT Plus for your team. If you're not doing it, please do that, because these are little things that you can start to do. Right. So, and then finally, we have tools. But again, what's going to happen in the next 2-3 years is every company is because your buyers are already investing. Your buyers are already investing on all these jobs, generative AI jobs, which means your buyers are investing. They expected you also to invest, or at least to keep up with this, right? Demand has been timid in sectors like real estate. Real estate bingo is going really, really, really high. As you can see here, they're already getting there. Right, which means we need to follow them with. And if you're not following them with, at least we should have answers on the readiness of it. But again, we are moving more and more energy side. The questions are very simple, which is for AI and data governance. This is where it is. So this is where 2 leaders, I spoke to them, which kind of gives you a general idea. They all are finalizing their 3-year strategy because it's September, December. So people are moving on. Either it's a September start or it's a January start. Okay, I just need to start. Yes, there is a lot of changes in AI, but what can I do? The other one, very, very, we use the word nerd because she came from the US and she called herself tech nerd, which is quite interesting. And she told me, like, what, I know I am so excited about this. I've asked my team to do all these things. We are going to go with that. Either way, both the approaches are not wrong. One is, clearly understanding where you could actually use these use cases within your company. Then you go for right tools and you go for right thing, which we normally assist companies with. Or we just say, okay, let's just, yes, I'm worried at the moment, but I don't have the time at the moment to address it. So let me be not an early adopter, but I'll be a quick follower. Also good, so one-to-one consultations, we normally do that. So again, these are some of the AI resources, that you can find in our Baachu Scribble website. Every month we do a webinar. We also have a lot of content, a lot of materials on there. Let's have a look. So year's reflection is here. Still the race within margins is there. We are getting with, we are still, if we can work with our CRM tools, if we can work with our CAFM system, ERP tools, that itself is a success. But now we are moving into the next wave of IoT and AI. And the challenge is, does our talent have time and the skill set to actually go and adopt these things, or is it going to be another toy for our IT teams? It's just there. So margins, there is, many companies are pulling out on certain sectors thinking the margins are low, but on the other side, some are just going on with the long term. But the good news is, especially in the public sector, you're finding a lot of 5+2 contracts and no more 3 years. But on other sectors like schools and stuff, you're going to still find catering contracts, cleaning contracts at 3 years, which is going to be the thing. Again, marketing, we are going to look into that, after this. How can you connect your marketing budget to the sales budget, to your operational budget, so that you have one truth, So as an overall thing, the net zero sustainability and our position to that has been very positive. And then we look at the market reports and stuff, people who know us, they use us, but otherwise others rely on these things. It's either an investor who come up with their own analyst, then they realized, hey, this is what we had. This is the reality. Can you now tell us realistically? This is the operations part of investment management. Can you realistically manage? It's like things are going well on, but it's a public sector. Don't underestimate the data challenge in there. It's very easy to work on bits and then win the bits. But if you take the data out and then if you try to understand where am I placed, how am I going to enable this data to ensure that I get a lot of insights, that's the biggest gap for you. But most of it we are trying to understand. So again, now we have 10 minutes. I'll have a quick show you of how we are trying. We are in the process of raising funding. I think 2.3 million is being lined up. I will share the good news. But at the same time, we are onboarding 5 mid-tier FM companies just inside the platform, because we are now bringing in the buyers. We are bringing in our friends from Cabinet Office and others to have a look into this. We are also bringing in from NHS. So the buyers will have access to the platform. The suppliers, gradually, we don't have capacity to get 3 or 5 in a quarter. We are doing that. But once we get the funding, then we could do a lot more on this, because we have a small team. And even in my case, even I am not fit to run this when the funding comes in, with AI comes in and other stuff. So we are starting to do this. So what that means is, yes, there is no FM platform, but we have memberships. We do events, webinars, we do market engagements, we do investor calls. But you know what? Instead of waiting for others to do it, we are going to do it ourselves 2024 onwards. So bring in stakeholders, suppliers, customers on a common platform, and we are going to take a product. So far, we have done a service-led approach. That's where we are here. But from 2024, we'll be doing a product-led approach. When it comes to product, and we already blasted our budget, but it's there. But anyway, so I'll quickly show you. These are all our training programs where they want in the bidder program, graphics. We have an AI-powered buyer training we have started, which on request, just with one buyer at the moment, or the other ones we are here for you. So if you're normally used to a webinars, we normally start like this. What are the contracts we monitor? What are the contracts we do, etc. But after May, what happened after May is we stopped monitoring this ourselves and we added into a Lens platform. We gave access to some of our close friends after May, June, July, and got some feedback, and then we updated it. And now the beta version is ready, and we're adding more. So we are sending it to working with few clients. So what I'll do here is, if you're okay with time, I will quickly show you what's inside the Lens platform. So in that way, you can at least have a quick look inside. So primarily, when Lens is just a dashboard, so primarily we don't want, so the biggest problem that you normally face is, okay, Bhaskar, we already subscribe to this tender alerts tool, we're already paying X amount of money, that's fine. But private sector, we have marketing teams working on lead generation, we attend all these events, we do all this amazing stuff, etc. We put all these things in CRMs, it's all great. But I want to ask you one question, which is like, okay, if I want to ask you, what is your presence within the FM market, and what are the contracts expiring, both public and private, etc., etc. These are some of the basic questions that's been asked again and again and again, and we thought, okay, fine. So what we have created is Lens. What you're seeing here is a Lens. Lens is nothing but dashboard after dashboard. So what you're finding here is what we call a contracts dashboard. This is a contracts dashboard. So we do public and private. We monitor multitude of sources, websites, public sector awards, and we start to do it. So very, very quickly you can do. And as you can see here, there is no fluffs of web pages. It's only one page, which means it's already cleansed. We don't, we cleanse the details before we put it into the tool, rather than we just go back and then say, okay, click this page, it takes you to the next page. Then you opens up into some other page. It's easy, right? Lazy, and it's easy. So we don't want to do that. So we categorize it, as I mentioned, it just is. This is the dashboard just on contract awards. It has public and private categorized cleanly. And wherever possible, we fill the details. And what we are doing now with the buyers is we are picking up who are the main buyers, and we are trying to fill the gaps with the main buyers. Here we go. Because you are struggling to build up your new suppliers to bid for your contracts, whereas suppliers want to know what contracts needs to come in the market and why nobody does this. That's the reason. They're going with nominal fees with the suppliers to get in, depending on what dashboards. At the moment, the early adopters get all the dashboards, but for others, it's just there. So primarily, it is a long list of all these things. So primarily, it just tells you which contract expiring when, what's the annual value of the contract, and so. So we have 15,000 contracts, but we only added X amount and we removed others because it's just to see what is FM. If somebody tells us what is FM, then we could add not 15,000, 25,000 to it. If somebody tells me this is only is FM, then it won't be 15,000 contracts. It's going to be 8,000 contracts. But because that's not there, we are scratching our head and making our own decisions on that. That's why with the buyers, we're discussing, okay, this is market dashboard, which means every week it gets updated. So every week you can have a good feel about where does the market stands, what are the different sectors, what are hard, soft split, and when is the contracts expiring, and what are the total value of the contracts by sectors and by years. So I can make some strategic decisions. Obviously, we know that the data is 70 to 72% accurate, but yeah, we can only do what we can do. We are not salespeople selling to the buyers. That's why we are giving up with early adopters at a nominal rate to just help us to fill the gaps, because we are happy to negate the fees, because it's expensive for us to learn this. It's a cleansed data. But for the bigger scheme of things, we can't keep doing every year this webinar and then say nothing is changing. We just want to say we are addressing ourselves through the industry, and this is what we are doing. So you can just play with it. You can filter it by anything. Again, many of the friends who already have access to it are in this webinar. So I'm repeating, I'm sorry. You can have a look into, whether I want to get it by private or public. I want to get it by different service or hard, soft, or anything. I can very quickly say, okay, Vaska, what is the hard FM? private sector market in, so this is specialist services for the smaller providers. And you can also go back and check the market, which meant I can go back and say, okay, I want to look at office and commercial buildings. So let me go back and then see hard FM opportunities in there. They can get it in a split second. Okay, 259 hard FM opportunities worth 3.5 billion. It's like you might have a lot more, but this gives you a starting point in less than a minute. Okay, and when does the contract expire? Okay, some of the contracts that we have because of COVID and stuff, we don't know actual end date, but that's okay. It still tells you this buyer has procured a service, and he's procured a single service, not an integrated FM. As people say, hey, office and commercial buildings always integrated. No, look at it here. We are finding lots and lots of single services providers doing. It could be security cleaning, or it could be hard FM. It's happening more and more. And if somebody comes, if a report tells you integrated FM, we love you, just tell them these people don't know. But again, these people don't know what's happening in the ground, because this is the thing. So you can just play with it, or you could search by a competitor, you could search by your own company, and you could say, oh my God, okay, fine. He doesn't have all the contracts off us. Good news. That's not a good news, because your buyers, if there's a retail buyer, and if you want a retail contract, and if you don't know you want a retail contract, and at the moment we are working with few buyers, and if the retail buyer goes back and check who are the competitors who play in the retail market, and if you don't have your details, then you're gone. Unless you are the ISS or the MITs or the JLLs of the world, where you get invited, CBREs of the world where you get invited. But others, we need to know, especially mid-tier is what we are focused on, because there's a lot of gold jewels there. And it's important because yes, we do the parent company and then we just go with it. But by the way, this is contract awards. You can play with that. On repeated request from May, initially we didn't had it. It's like many companies already subscribing to all these things. We cleanse the details. There won't be a lot of contracts here. What we do here is very, very, every week, what are the FM contracts expiring this week? No tool will tell you. No tool. You pay £50,000, nothing. Nobody will tell you. But in our case, we just want to say, okay, fine. Very, very, again, dashboard based. What are the soft FM contracts that are live at the moment in public sector? What are the local government contracts that are live? And when are they expiring? So I could very, very quickly go back and check, click that link, and I could go back into specific thing all in one place. I don't need to crawl through thing after thing. If we know this is the direct details from the contract value, but if we don't know, then we look back into contract awards and we fill this gap. So in that way, we can connect this. So again, we are now connecting this one with that, which means if this is a renewal, we are going to add the buyers and other information. So again, this is intelligent bidding, right? Again, it's so easy to give you links after links and do it. But many companies are spending 30,000, but unfortunately, they are really embedded. They have been in the market for 12, 15 years. We are just making a product-led approach at the moment. So that's why we are giving this for like £3,000 a year. Just take it. So and then anything more. But if you want private sector and others, it's 9,000 a year. But no problem with the number of license, up to 10 at the moment. So we can just go. So then comes the interesting part. Okay, fine. What happens, Bhaskar? Because we work with many of these people. If I want to know what are the buildings in different regions, because I don't bid for these opportunities. We don't have a big team. But what we have is a good operational team. We have a good cleaners. We have good security guards in Manchester. But at the same time, we want to know all the buildings that are available in Manchester so that we are a local company can go and do that. Again, we know the smaller FM companies, 1 to 15, 20 million pounds or even £500,000. They bid for 10,000, 15,000, 20,000. It's not even a bid. They speak to the security guard, understand what's happening, and they get it. So in this case, you can very, very simply go back and say, okay, I want to look at Manchester. Oops, spelling typo, and Greater Manchester, just in case. And then you can see, okay, at the moment, I want to know, okay, I'm scratching my head and saying, I'm a small SME working in Manchester. What do I do? Who are the managing agents who are very, very powerful in this area? So I have a preferred supplier with CBRE. Oh my God, okay, CBRE doesn't have much presence in there. So I better go back and do it. Again, these are very, very, so we cut the clutter, we tell you what to do. Again, we are adding PFI details to it, and we are adding a lot more. We are working with the Property Association at the moment to just say, hey guys, you want to work with SMEs. SMEs don't know where you exist. So we have added the data that's available. Help us to refine this data. Help us to find the contact information. As you can see here, you can also go back and then see what the project is about, and then we remove the contact details for now, but we can also add it. So primarily, it also means what are the property type. Now, the 1 or 2 companies they want to have a look at. We only work with business parks. Pascal, what happens? It's just here, right in Manchester, or general business parks. It's just there. Again, we made start, and we just want to go from there. So what we are trying to address, part of the overall tool is, okay, fine. With the data, with the report, yes, we are addressing it. With the public sector data, with tender alerts and contract awards, we are working with the buyers and suppliers, give them early access to the tool and fixing the data gap. So that what that meant is you have a clear idea about your own market. People might say, Bhaskar, this is competitive intelligence. It's not. It's publicly available information, but we can only crack what we can. It's not really publicly available. Help us to fill the details. And you know what? Very, very rarely you're going to find the same supplier and the other same supplier competing in every single sector. Yes, it could be, but still, they might not have the bandwidth to bid and win every single thing on that. Because at the broader scheme of the industry, let's not allow the industry to crumble just because we are working in silos. So this becomes a collaborative platform for us, and we are just going to add more and more towards it. So the point, the biggest thing, the surprise thing here is this connects to everything. So the data source, this is where it becomes, in the past, or you might be familiar, is, they give you a tool and you go with it and they tell you we connect to CRM. Whereas in this case, I can actually connect it to any tool within your company. I can go back and connect any data connection. It could be your own Power BI. It could be this connects to generative AI, connect to ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity. So we can configure that to get you this. And what we're planning to do here is to come out with what we call a battle card. Battle card is, okay, fine. These are the tenders that are expiring this month. And these are your 5 competitors. At the end of the month, there will be a generative AI generated newsletter, what we call a battle card, which tells you, bingo, this is the intelligence specifically for you. So what we see here is a market dashboard, but what we can also do here is a custom dashboard. We can keep creating, as you can see, a custom dashboard. Say, Bhaskar, we don't want all these things. I want to know Manchester, and I want to have public sector and local government, and I want private sector hard FM. We take this information, add a custom dashboard, so you clearly see, as and when the market moves, your market also moves. So you can go back and see what's happening, what's the latest. What am I doing, etc. That's where we are getting into. And the data sources is very wide. It connects to CRM. It's connected to any of your internal databases. It also connects to a CAPM system or anything. But if your configuration is there, what that meant is you can bring in all these things into one place. What we're calling is all-in-one intelligence platform for facilities management, because we want to focus only on this. That's why it's a vertical SaaS. That's the note. And let me get back to the slides, and then we can close. Hope this was useful. We will give you access to if you're interested in, but we are not pushing ahead and telling anything and everybody. It's not even announced in the public domain, as you know, because we just want to work with few people, make them work. Then we want to work with the right type of investors who are not short-term, who genuinely want to see UK grow, angel investors, etc. And then 2024 onwards, we'll go boom, we'll just go on that. So this is what we talked about. And these are the support that we can do for you. Most people know what we can do for you. But either way, the point here is, let me get back to it. It's a year's reflection. Technology is becoming more and more integral. But when it comes to people, it's there for us. But again, the personality of the brand, which is the talk I gave in IFM conference 2 years ago, is still very valid. Which means the personality of your brand is super important. Don't forget about it. And ensure that what you spend on marketing, because this tool, which I showed you, also connect to Google Analytics, YouTube Analytics, and everything, which meant it also connects to your website traffic, which meant we can clearly track, this is my marketing spend, and these are the number of people who are coming on board. How many of them are the buyers who my bid team is actually bidding? So at the moment, marketing team is remunerated, which is like, hey, good, we have got 100,000 new visitors to our website. Most of them will be our competitors, right? Most of them will be competitors, which is like, but they are remunerated for all the traffic growth, for all the form downloads, for all the nice, cool campaigns that they did on, all the good stuff. But in reality, the sales team must be like, okay, whatever marketing talks in online is not really converting into sales, because that's a total different story to it. And the sales collateral or the bid collateral that the bid team has not necessarily goes back and tells the same message to the buyer. So what we can hear is, that's the next stage that we're evolving in January 2024. You qualify, these are the customers, you qualify, these are the competitors. Then we can match what they say in the public to what's in the contracts to what's available within your thing into one place so that the insights are consistent. So that's why we're future-proofing as we go. It's very exciting time, but we can't do this without your support. So prime point is here. We are coming out very, very well on this, but still we are working on silos. But the most important, the future industry, depending on adaptability and how we integrate, and most important, how we evolve. Otherwise, you're going to see a lot of integration that's happening, a lot of organic growth that's going to happen, and we are going to clap our hands and say, amazing. We are amazing. But the foundational aspects of it is very, very weak. And that we can't go back and look at IFM's top 50. Why are we losing all these brands, big brands? Right? It's not just that they didn't do anything wrong, because they were easy to buy. And there will be a lot of other brands which you say today top 50 won't exist in the next 2-3 years because they'll be bought. And what happens because of that? Things will change. So that's it. So hope this was useful. The webinar will be available on demand with the same link. Share it to your friends and families and anybody who's interested in. And otherwise, we'll get back to our webinars from November. I'm taking time off in October. Come back, share the good news about funding and other things. But if you want access to Lens, we'll give you access to Lens. Thank you. If there's any questions, let me know.